Yeah.
Okay. And then we didn't debate for the essay that you wrote up, so you missed that.
Okay.
But
Well,
you don't have to do it.
Okay.
That one. Alright. We're gonna be on the clock.
Matt, you have substitute. I don't, it's the first time I've ever seen it. It's like this is adventure or something. Like, no, she's not. It's not good, they tell me anything about it. But now, their voice is loud, real. It's like, music stop, she's like, hello!
I thought it was like so hard.
Did you
Scary. Yes. That's all you do.
Did you finish it?
Not to the lights.
Did you finish it?
Yes.
Easy.
It's a lot.
That was like Saturday, and we were like changing
Is it just
It's like, hello there, class!
What's the lunch?
You're walking down. No, that's not fair. That's it.
No. Well, I should have like this. They are turning. Hey, let's do it.
All right, welcome. Morning. I've got a little something on the front board for you to start with in our next section of notes. It's just a very open-ended question. I want you to do 2 columns in your notes. Start chapter 12. Tell me what you already know about Chinese history and culture. Just up, guys. And then tell me what you want to know. You just do like 2 things. whatever you can. Come up with whatever you can. If you can't think of anything in like Chinese history, tell me something like current day, just something you know about China. But they use that to detect those things. Yeah.
Their country Right. Yes, fine.
No.
All right, how we doing? We good? All right, let me hear what you got. If wherever you got, that's fine. So let's start with the what you know. Gotcha. Okay, you've heard of the Opium War. Do you know anything about it, or you've just heard of it?
He's like the British opium.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Do you know that from like last year in school, or just you've heard about it? Okay, all right, that's pretty good. Good.
Their monarch was split into dynasties.
Okay, most of their history consists of dynasties that rise and fall. Absolutely. Anything else, Colin?
Gunpowder completely destroyed the sunrise society.
Okay, the early format of gunpowder, and eventually it spreads around the world, actually started in China. Okay, it wasn't used as a weapon originally, but the concept of gunpowder and explosives begins there. Okay. Yep.
Okay, well, their population is faster than their food supply.
Okay.
And the first chapter of it's not really read.
Yep.
And then they also practice censorship.
Okay. They practice censorship currently, and they also, in multiple times in history, they've actually had their population outgrow their food supply.
Their food was very like strict country, like there wasn't any real room for like variety, I guess, like what we have here. Like it was a very like centralized.
Okay, and that's going to impact part of what we're going to talk about today. It is a strict society. They're set in their ways. Karen.
The U.S. kind of had to look ahead and like try to get everyone to agree, like all the European powers to agree to an open door policy, so that they could keep trading in China.
All right, so the U.S. had to be very proactive. Okay, did you know that before you read, or?
No.
Okay. What did you put in the other column then? What do you want to know, Lexi?
Empire, like they have like an emperor.
Okay. And first of this, what else, Alex?
How exactly their government fell and changed so rapidly?
Okay. What causes the changes in government? And there's actually going to be a couple different periods that we'll talk about in this class. Not all in this chapter, but
How long did the Age of Dynasties last?
okay. Along with the Age of Dynasties. Anything else? Those are usually pretty common questions. Card.
How come the influences, like the European influences, didn't stick?
How come European influence didn't stick? All right. Let's definitely get into that. All right, so let's move ahead. So this next chapter, chapter 12, as far as time period in history, the years that we are going to be discussing here are all the same that we have been discussing for the last couple of months. So we're like in the mid-1800s, the late 1800s, and into the very early 1900s. That's the time period that's going to be covered here. However, we are moving into an entirely new section of the world. Okay, we've talked a lot about Britain because of the Industrial Revolution. That's what's going on there. We've talked about Latin America, where countries are starting to gain independence movements. That's what's happening in that portion of the world. We talked about the Ottoman Empire in decline, being colonized by European powers. And we talked about Southeast Asia, which is right below China down here with like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And those are places where European powers have arrived and started to colonize and use their economic influence to gain territory. Okay, so now we are going to move into China, which is a very significant country in world history during this time period because, like some of you said, they are very set in their ways and they don't really want to interact with the West, meaning European powers such as Britain, France, Belgium, or the United States. However, those European powers and the United States kind of force their way into China for economic reasons, and that's what we're going to see here. But China fights very hard to prevent that influence from coming into the country. So prior to industrialization and imperialism, this is when China is operating under the dynasty system, where you have rise and fall of dynasties within China. Very strong, this is characterized by very strong leadership and very strict adherence to Chinese customs and culture. Not a lot of change. So prior to the industrial and imperial periods of history, China was actually the leader of the world in science and technology. Like, for example, before industrialization and imperialism took place in Europe, China was the country that developed ideas of gunpowder and explosives. Okay, now they weren't really using it for military purposes. It was more for like ceremonial and entertainment purposes, but those same ideas are taken and applied to military technology in Europe and the United States, and eventually contributing to the weapons that are going to be used at the end of the 1800s and then World War I being right around the corner. Okay. The United States and other European powers make attempts to start trade networks with China. They send representatives over and they bring gifts and they try and impress the Chinese leadership, but because of them being so strict in their culture and traditions, the Chinese actually reject everything that the Western powers bring over. And a big reason for that is because of their self-sufficiency. What does that mean, Colin?
They don't need the outside world.
They don't need to have anything from the outside world. Everything that they need to produce to survive, they produce right there within their own country. The Chinese are also in a very good situation as far as their economy goes, trading with other countries. They only have one port city in the very southern, let me back up here, very southern part of China, down here, okay, right on the coast, is where all their trading occurs. And that's the only spot that foreign ships come in and out of the entire country. Just one port city. It's very profitable for the Chinese because they sell more than they buy at that in their port city. Okay? So they are actually making money from other countries because they have what we call a trade surplus, meaning they're taking more, or they're sending more out than they are buying. Okay, here's what changes all that, and Sarah, this is what you brought up. Opium. What is opium? Sorry.
Heroin.
Okay,
Addictive drug.
it's a narcotic drug. Okay. So opium is a narcotic drug that is made from poppy plants, like poppy seed. And originally it had been in China for hundreds of years prior to this time period. It was not new to Chinese culture. However, Chinese doctors were only using it for pain purposes on their patients up till this point in history. And again, when we're talking about like poppy seeds, you eat poppy seeds. Like there's poppy seed bagels, poppy seed dressing that you put on salads. I know there's poppy seeds in like some of the breakfast coffee cakes if you've ever eaten that before. Okay. You don't want to eat any of that stuff within a couple of days of having to do like a drug test. Like when you get a job, they'll usually send you to get a drug test before you actually officially get hired. Why do you think? Go, Rebecca.
It shows up in your system and it can stay for a
Yeah, it'll show up on your drug test that you are doing drugs if you have eaten things that contain poppy seeds like salad dressing, bagels, and it'll be in your system when you do the drug test. I had somebody in the last class that said they actually asked those questions when they got there to do the drug test. When I've had to do my drug test for work purposes, I've never been asked before, I don't think, but at least not that I remember. Chase, did you have a comment, question? It just catch you off guard that like you can be showing up as a druggie if you...
Is this still like the used drug?
Yes. Yeah. This is still used. Yeah.
Let's just go to,
Yeah.
how can we go, like, this is kind of random, but, like, how do you, like, if you just ate a bunch of poppy seeds, would you have the same effects as, like?
No, it wouldn't give you the same effect as actually using it as a drug. But in a drug test, it would look like you're possibly using the drug. Okay. Yeah, you're not. If you eat a lot of bagels that have poppy seeds, you're not in any danger. You'll be okay. All right. So by 18, what happens is the British are one of the groups of people, European powers. Lexi, sorry.
How do you know if your bagels are
Usually those little
Breakfast every day.
You eat bagels every day?
Yeah.
What do you buy in a pack? Does it say on there what's in there?
I don't know.
Are there seeds in them?
They'll be
No,
on
it's just
top
like
of
a
the
little,
bagel.
that's just like you find it.
They'll be on top of the
Lexi,
bagel.
you'd be able to see it.
It's like little bits.
Yeah, they're like little, like,
You'll be able to see.
That's just like...
Don't worry,
I
Lexi,
know.
you'll be able.
Read about puppies.
You'll be able. You'll get a job.
Don't eat a bagel.
So, the British are one of the European powers that are trading with the Chinese. However, from the British perspective, they are losing money. Any idea, any guess, based on what you know about the British and what they trade with the United States, especially in other places, what's like one of their main things that they like to buy? British?
I know they sell tea.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and tea is it. There's a lot of tea that comes in and goes out of Britain. So that's what they're looking for to trade, especially with China. Cotton jokes on them. What was it? Cotton? Not so much in China. Other areas of Southeast Asia is a little bit more heavily reliant on cotton. Tea is the main thing that they are after in China. However, the British, they are buying more product out of China than they are bringing in. So somehow they need to make up for that trade deficit. They need to make more money. So what they do is they start putting opium into Chinese society. And they get the Chinese addicted to opium to increase their market that they can sell the drug to. Opium was illegal in Britain. They couldn't sell this product in Britain. However, in China, the British government lets it happen for economic reasons. And by 1835, you've got about 12 million plus Chinese citizens that are addicted to opium. So the Chinese government, they actually send formal requests to the British to stop the sale of opium in China. They send letters telling the British government what is happening in China and why they need to stop. However, the British, essentially, they refuse to do so. The opium sales continue. And this is what leads to the actual war, the Opium War. And the war itself is primarily a naval battle. What does that mean? Or naval war, Lexi? Yeah, it's all at sea. Okay, it's a naval ship. What do we know about the British Navy, Colin? Okay, most advanced in the world at this time period. The Chinese, they really didn't have much of a need for a navy up till this point, so there is a major gap in technology and naval warfare between these two groups. So the result of the Opium War is a very one-sided win for the British. Okay, it's kind of humiliating and embarrassing for the Chinese fleet. They are destroyed very quickly, and the British easily win the Opium War. And this leads to a set of treaties and agreements that in human history are kind of acknowledged as some of the most one-sided agreements that have ever been produced in human history, because the British and other European powers and the United States get so much while the Chinese are losing a great deal. And the original treaty that ends the Opium War is the Treaty of Nanjing. And one of the most significant things that is also produced by this is when the British acquire Hong Kong.
Isn't the lease for Hong Kong like going away? Like it's. But I thought it's either Hong Kong wants its independence, or the lease that Britain technically has on the land is running out of time.
Yeah, we're actually going to bring that up. I think we've talked about it briefly in this class before. Hong Kong today is, what can you tell me about Hong Kong? Has anyone had like family members that have ever had to travel to Hong Kong for like business purposes, or who, Bridget?
My uncle.
Okay, did he tell you much about it, his experience? Okay.
It's really westernized compared to the rest of the country.
Okay. So Hong Kong is very westernized. What else do we know about it? Alex?
It's kind of like the capitalist, like it's the prime example of capitalism in like the whole world, and it's one of the special zones in China where capitalism is allowed to occur.
Okay. So Hong Kong is kind of an interesting circumstance in China because China operates as a communist state. However, Hong Kong is one of the most capitalist places in the entire world. And they are actually also one of the top cities in the world as far as commerce and business go. It's a very crowded city, a lot of buildings, very tightly packed together, but there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of commerce, very populated. China wants to have control of Hong Kong. They want Hong Kong to be part under the Chinese government. However, what do the people of Hong Kong want? And this has been something that's been developing over the last year. Yeah, they want to be independent. So we've had a lot of independence movements and people that have been like in the streets protesting against the Chinese government and so forth because they want to be an independent Hong Kong. So that's something that is ongoing and still developing, these pro-democracy movements in Hong Kong today.
Didn't the Chinese government, I think this was last year, gave them like 3 pre-selected candidates, and the Chinese government called it democracy, and there was a big protest?
Yeah, there has been, that has happened in Hong Kong before. The Chinese government has tried to like use propaganda in a way because they have said, we'll allow Hong Kong to have elections, but then it's not really a free election because the Chinese government picks the couple of candidates that are actually able to run for political office. So it's very limited choices in who you're actually voting for. But the Chinese government says, we let you have democracy, you had an election, but they don't really say that, we picked the candidates that are going to run in that election. Okay, so not even a full 2 years after the Treaty of Nanjing occurs, the United States and other foreign, specifically European powers, gain extraterritorial rights into 5 of the major ports in China. Any idea what extraterritorial rights are? What that means, Colin, do you know what that means?
They're able to have trading power and decisions in that good area. They don't have to operate as a communist, they can operate as capitalist.
Okay, they don't have to follow the rules of China within those 5 cities, 5 ports. Okay, so it's basically the foreign powers are going to dictate what the rules and laws are going to be in those places, and China has no control over that. So again, the Opium War and then the treaties that have followed, this has opened the door for the West to enter into China. Okay. So I have a video I'm going to share with you here on the Opium War. If you haven't finished writing, don't worry, we'll come back to this.
At Sam Adams.
Okay, so this will be kind of just a review of what we have already gone over. Kind of ties everything together nicely here. It's just a couple minutes long video that was put out by the History Channel.
What's like the end of that one?
Opium started being used in China in the 8th century, but it wasn't until the 1700s that more opium started to be imported from India primarily into China.
Opium dens are the largest place where people gather together. They smoke opium together, they chat. It's a very sociable kind of environment. But there is a mild level of addiction that became widespread, such that the demand for opium was huge.
During the 1830s, the volume of opium going into China greatly increased. The British East India Company became the main source of opium. And it was very important to the British because it supplied them with a vast quantity of income.
The British in the 18th century had a problem. They had a deficit in trade. They wanted to buy in China, but they didn't have much to sell. They wanted to buy soap, they wanted to buy porcelain, but most of all, they wanted to buy tea. And that tea had to be paid for.
One of the only things that the Chinese would take from the British was silver. And by selling opium, the British generated a lot of silver that they could use to cover their costs. The emperor grew quite concerned about this because the silver started flowing out of China instead of into China, which had been the case for many centuries before. He decided to prohibit opium. There were a number of people caught and put to death or stripped of their holdings. The emperor was trying to send a very clear message to the foreigners that the opium trade was shameful and it would no longer be tolerated. His actions were what helped precipitate the Opium War.
There was great disagreement back in Britain about whether Britain should go to war against China over the right to sell opium. However, business interests are the ones that seem to prevail, and very successfully.
The Opium War was a devastating loss for China. They were totally outmatched by the military abilities of the British. The Opium War resulted in what is widely been called unequal treaties, which basically gave the British and other foreign countries a lot more rights with respect to free trade.
By the end of the century, Britain negotiates a gradual reduction in its imports into China. However, in the meantime, Chinese growers have started to produce their opium. And this is always the challenge in the drug trade. It's not stopping supply, it's stopping demand. And it really isn't until the Communist Party takes control in 1949 that they're able to bring an end to the opium trade.
At Sam Adams, we celebrate the independent.
All right. So here's what I'm going to have you do next. like I mentioned at the end of the video there, the goal of the Chinese is not really to stop the supply of opium from being in China, but it's more they need to stop the demand, the addiction that the Chinese people have to smoke the opium as basically a recreational drug and not use it for pain relieving purposes as it had been traditionally used in China for centuries leading up to that. So what I have for you here, this is actually one of the letters that was sent by China to the British government, requesting that opium not be sold within China. All right, so let me tell you what you're looking at here first, and then I'm going to release you into your table teams to work on this. Okay? So if you look at the first page, there's a little paragraph at the top. Just cross that out. That's like the end of another reading that's not part of this, okay, when I scan the page. So just cross off that little bit at the top. Underneath where it reads the curse of opium, the letter to Queen Victoria, that's not actually part of the letter. That'll give you some background, so read that first. Okay, then I'll go on to the next page. There are 5 questions that you're going to work on with your teammates at your table, right above where the letter starts. Okay, so the actual letter to Queen Victoria starts with, His Majesty the Emperor confronts and cherishes foreigners as well as Chinese. Okay, that's where the letter actually starts. Goes on the rest of that page. The next page is all part of the letter. And then on the very back, the letter ends at the very top of the page. So where it says the plight of the emperor's subjects, anything below that you can just cross off. That's part of a different reading. Okay? All right, so you see where everything is? Okay, so read the introduction with your team, read the letter with your team, work on the questions, make sure that you use evidence and cite things from the article to answer the questions, pull information right out of there. I will be around to help you as needed, and then but you can work with your teammates as well, and then we'll be going over this, okay? So go ahead and get started.
Yeah, sure. Alright, are we reading the background stuff? Okay. Although the opium poppy was grown in China and opium derivatives had been used in Chinese medicine for centuries, smoking opium as a narcotic dates from the 17th century, shortly after the Spanish and Portuguese introduced tobacco smoking in China. Opium use increased dramatically in late 1700s when British and Indian intelligence with access to the world's greatest poppy growing areas in northern America, and that began to import large amounts of opium into China. By the early 1800s, millions of Chinese at every social and economic level injected opium. Almost 2 million pounds of opium were sold in China every year. Chinese officials viewed the social and economic consequences of opium addiction with increasing alarm. There was no agreement on what should be done. The legalization of opium and the expansion of poppy growing in China and most of the country's dependence on imports. Others recommended a total ban on opium imports and use, an approach that once supported the real ban on opium use in 1 year later, he said his officials went to confiscate 4 million stock of opium and help it trade in opium altogether. When it served in a handling academy, China's hosts, including they attract and suppress open arrival and arms to continue moral persuasion and the sale of opium by Chinese in foreign countries. Insight into the thinking is provided by a letter he wrote to
No, nobody's at one.
heard of what the subject sale of where
Nothing came of his letter and the refusal of British merchants and to cooperate drove Liz to more drastic steps. He arrested the leading English opium trader and blockaded the royal border until its merchants agreed to send over 20,000 Chinese. On receiving the opium, he had mixed with water, salt, and lime and flushed it into the sea. On learning of these events, the British government dispatched a fleet of mobilized Indian troops to protect British China, while the flotilla of almost 50 vessels was en route training fighting between the Chinese and the English had already started around the world, so the opium war was underway.
His Majesty the Emperor comforts and cherishes foreigners as well as Chinese. He loves all those doing away without discrimination. Whenever a prophet is found, he wishes to share it with all men. Whenever he appears, he likewise will eliminate the words and have all mankind. His heart is in fact honored to you. Generally speaking, the successors of your honorable character have been respectful and obedient. Time and again they have sent petitions to China saying, "We are grateful to His Majesty the Emperor for the impartial and favorable treatment granted to the citizens of come to China to trade, etc. I am pleased to present you as the ruler of an honorable country. I am thoroughly familiar with the principle of righteousness and are grateful for the favor of His Majesty the Emperor has bestowed upon your subjects. Because of this fact, the celestial empire following its traditional policy of treating foreigners with kindness has been doubly considerate towards the people from England. You have traded in China for almost 200 years, and as a result, your country has become wealthy and prosperous.
As this trade has lasted for a long time, there are bound to be unscrupulous as well as honest traders. Among the unscrupulous are those who bring opium to China to harm the Chinese. They succeed so well that this poison has spread far and wide in all the provinces. You, I hope, will certainly agree that people who pursue material gains of the welfare of others can be neither tolerated by heaven nor endured by men.
Yeah, it puts a person, you know, what you're
Your country is more than 6,000 from China. The purpose of your ships in coming to China is to realize a large profit. Since this profit is realized in China, is in fact taken away from the Chinese people, helping foreigners return to Germany for the benefit they have received by sending their poison to learn their better bounties. They may not intend to harm others on purpose, but the fact remains that they are so obsessed with material gain that they have no concern whatever for the harm that they cause to others. Have they no conscience? I have heard that you strictly prohibit opium in your own country, indicating unmistakably that you know how harmful opium is. You do not wish opium to harm your own country, but you choose to bring that harm to other countries such as China.
Products that originate from China are all useful items. They are good for food and other purposes and are easy to sell. Has China produced one item that is common in foreign countries? For instance, tea and rhubarb. It's so hard on foreigners' livelihood that they have to consume them every day. When China consumes herself taking away from her own advantage without showing any regard for how foreigners people live. Number 5, they have rely on Chinese raw materials such as soap and oil. China stopped preparing foreigners profit at once used to lead and to work for China to immigrate food products and businesses to Germany to use for an effective You've already good before, and because you don't know how to really place, but you do not just place it out all the country. And you don't know this thing really good. What how to bring the guys together. The reason why we consistently allow foreigners to ship out such Chinese products to ST, and so that we feel
You got 3 on it.
I've heard that you are kind, compassionate, and honored. I am sure that you will not use others but yourself, do not desire. I've also heard that you have instructed every British ship that sails from Guangzhou not to bring any prohibited goods to China. It seems that your policy is as enlightened as it is clever. The fact that British ships have continued to bring opium to China results perhaps from the impossibility of making a thorough inspection of all of them going to the traders. I am sending you this letter to reiterate the seriousness with which we enforce the law of Celestial Empire to make sure that merchants from the honorable country will not attempt to violate.
I've heard that the areas under your direct jurisdiction, I don't know, I can't say it, such as London, Scotland, and Ireland, do not produce opium. It is produced instead in Indian possessions such as Bengal, Madras, Bombay, Patna, and Bengal. In these possessions, the English people will not only plant opium poppies that stretch from one mountain to another, but also open factories to manufacture this terrible drug. As funds accumulate in years pass by, the poison that they produce increases in its wicked intensity. Its repugnant odor reaches its highest side. Heaven is furious with anger, and all the gods of heaven.
Probably would be easiest because you're not really
I
going to
suggested that you destroy and plow under all of these
And then when we put them in our Bible,
grow
just keep
food
going.
crops
Like
inside,
that one.
while issuing an order to punish severely anyone who dares to plant opium poppies again. If you adopt this policy of love, so as to produce good and exterminate evil, heaven will protect you, and gods will bring you good fortune. Moreover, you will enjoy a long life and be rewarded with a multitude of children and grandchildren. In short, by taking this one message, you can bring great happiness to others as well as yourself. Why do you not do it? For every government, past or present, one of its primary functions is to control the area that administers its questions on the back. So not using the law to punish them if they choose to violate it. A foreigner who goes to England and has to obey the English law, how can an Englishman not obey the Chinese law when he is in possession of Chinese? The present law calls for the imposition of death sentence. The Chinese could not peddle as much opium in years past. If foreigners had not heard of China, it is clear that the true culprits of China's death as a result of opium have experienced foreign countries being the cause of other people's death. Why should they also be spared from capital punishment? The murder of one person subject to the death sentence. Just imagine how many people opium is given. This is the rationale behind the new law, which says that any foreigner who brings opium to China will be sentenced to death. Our purpose is to eliminate this poison causing law into the benefit. Our celestial empire towers over all the countries in virtue and possesses a power great and awesome enough to carry out its plans. But we will not prosecute a person without warning him in advance. That is why we have made our law explicit and clear. If the merchants of your honorable country wish to enjoy trade with us on a permanent basis, they must observe our law by cutting off once and for all this supply of opium. Under no circumstance should they test our intention to enforce the law by deliberately violating it. The U.S. rule of your honorable country should be required to undercover the hidden and unmasked food. It is hoped that you will continue to enjoy your country and become more and more respectful.
It's hard to get all over the place.
How wonderful it is that we can all enjoy the blessing of peace. Are we supposed to
You just leave that there on the road and seal it.
like in our notes?
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it on my notes. What does the letter reveal about Joseph? What does one letter reveal about
So the Chinese are against foreign relations, right? Yeah.
The Chinese
He seems to be neutral with all the other rulers. He kept complimenting him.
Just keep working from there.
Europeans want to gain
I just have your last
All right, listen carefully for your assignments and due dates. The reading that you are currently working on with your group, just bring it back tomorrow wherever you have left off. Okay, you'll get more class time on that tomorrow. The study guide that I just gave you that goes in section 1, that's going to be due on Thursday. Okay, so we've started this. We haven't discussed everything in class yet that's going to be on here, but if you want to get it done early, it's all going to be in your book. But it's due on Thursday. Okay, so nothing is due tomorrow, but you've got Thursday's assignment in your hands already. Okay? And then we'll keep working with the letter to Queen Victoria tomorrow. We'll just pick up where we left off and wrap this up. Alright, so make sure you push in your chairs when you go. If you need any page covers, put this stuff in your binder. Grab one. Put the letter to Queen Victoria in your class handout section, and then the study guide, obviously, in the study guide section. Go ahead, Julian. See you later. You got your stuff in the binder?
What? Did you finish reading your article? Yeah. Did you notice something? He said honorable country or honorable.